The piercing blue light of a dying star lit the cold, barren surface of the planet below. No living thing had walked here for centuries, and yet, at that very moment, a ship descended from the sky, its engines humming low in the eerie silence of the desolate world. Inside, the faint glow of alien technology flickered. The air was thick with a strange, metallic scent, and the hum of the ship reverberated in the lone pilot's chest. His name was Eric, a former soldier, now just a man running from his past. He'd found himself on the edge of the universe, lost in the endless expanse. His mission, simple, or so he thought: find a mysterious alien woman named Lyra, a fugitive from a race of mutants. He wasn't sure why he'd agreed to help her. Maybe it was because of the darkness in her eyes, or the way her pain resonated with his own. She was in trouble, and he couldn't help but feel a strange pull to her, an undeniable attraction. But there was something more about her, something she wasn't telling him, and that something was about to change the course of his life forever. Eric landed on the planet with a heavy heart. His boots hit the ground, a stark contrast to the soft, alien earth beneath him. He had learned to push the discomfort of new worlds away. But on this planet, something felt different. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked terrain. Eric scanned the area, eyes darting over the alien landscape. No signs of life, but he knew she was here. Lyra, he murmured, her name almost a prayer. He'd been searching for days now, and each passing hour only deepened the uncertainty gnawing at his soul. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman with flowing silver hair, glowing skin, and eyes like twin moons, reflecting a world beyond human comprehension. Lyra, Eric, she said, her voice softer than the wind, yet it resonated with a power he couldn't ignore. I knew you'd come. He couldn't help but stare, his breath hitching. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. But something had changed in her eyes. There was fear now, a fear that had replaced the quiet strength she once carried. You said you were running from something, Eric said, stepping closer, his voice low. What's going on, Lyra? What aren't you telling me? She hesitated, her gaze flickering away as if searching for the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice a whisper. I'm not who you think I am, Eric. Before he could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A deep, ominous growl filled the air, and in a flash, an army of heavily armored soldiers appeared, surrounding them in an instant. Run! Lyra shouted, her eyes wild with fear. You don't know who they are. Eric's instincts kicked in. He grabbed her arm, pulling her behind him. Who are they? And who are you? Lyra's face twisted with pain. They're my people, she said through gritted teeth. But they're not the ones who are going to kill you. The soldiers advanced, their weapons raised. Eric, with years of combat experience, quickly analyzed their tactics. These weren't just ordinary soldiers. They were trained for war, efficient and ruthless. He had to act fast. With a swift motion, he drew his blaster, the weapon humming to life in his hand. Stay close, he commanded, his voice cold with resolve. Together, they fought back. Eric moved with practiced precision, his body a blur of motion as he fired, taking down one soldier after another. But even as he fired, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Lyra than met the eye. After the last soldier fell, silence enveloped them. Eric was breathing heavily, sweat beading on his forehead. Lyra was still beside him, her expression unreadable. Tell me the truth, Lyra, Eric demanded. Who are you really? Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. I'm the daughter of King Vraxis, she said, her voice trembling. A king of an alien empire. I'm not just a mutant. I'm a royal heir, and they are after me to control the throne. Eric's heart skipped a beat. Your father is a king. Lyra nodded. Yes, but my people, they're not like you or me. They are cruel, and they've turned into something unrecognizable. That's why I left. Eric's mind was spinning. The woman he had risked everything for was the daughter of a king whose empire was built on brutality. And now, it seemed, the fate of her world was tied to his. He stared at her, his voice softening. What do you want me to do? I need to stop them. But I can't do it alone, Lyra said, her voice filled with quiet desperation. Eric's eyes met hers, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Everything he had ever known seemed to collapse in on itself. He had thought he was rescuing a fugitive, a woman in need. But now, he understood. He wasn't just fighting for her. He was fighting for a cause, for a future, for her. Suddenly, a ship appeared overhead, a massive craft descending from the sky. It was them, the king's soldiers. They are here, Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. Eric knew what he had to do. He turned to her, grabbing her face in his hands, staring deep into her eyes. I'll protect you, he said, his words heavy with meaning. No matter what. Lyra's eyes softened, and for the briefest moment, he saw a flicker of hope. The enemy stormed forward, and Eric immediately sprang into action. The battle that followed was chaotic, with blasts of energy filling the air. Eric was a blur of motion, his body moving with the speed and precision of someone who had long lived on the edge of death. But even as he fought with everything he had, he knew the odds were against them. Lyra stood beside him, her powers awakening. She unleashed waves of energy that sent the soldiers flying, but they were relentless. She was strong, but even she couldn't fight them all. As the battle reached its peak, Eric found himself facing a towering figure, the leader of the enemy forces. The man, clad in dark, gleaming armor, stepped forward, his eyes glowing with malice. You're too late, the leader sneered, his voice cold and cruel. The throne will be mine. With a roar, the man lunged at Eric, his weapon crackling with deadly energy. Eric dodged, but the attack was swift and brutal. He barely managed to avoid a fatal blow, his side searing with pain. Lyra, seeing Eric wounded, cried out in horror. No, she screamed, her voice breaking. In that moment, something inside Eric snapped. He had already made up his mind. He would give everything for her. With a fierce cry, he charged at the leader, tackling him to the ground. They grappled, each struggling for control, but Eric's resolve was unshakable. He fought with the strength of someone who had already decided he would die to protect the woman he loved. Finally, with one last effort, Eric plunged his blade into the leader's chest. The alien leader gasped, his body twitching violently before going still. Breathing heavily, Eric staggered back, his vision swimming with darkness. His body was failing him, and he knew there was no way he could survive much longer. Lyra rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. Eric, no, you can't. He smiled weakly, lifting a hand to her cheek. I'll be okay. Just promise me you'll keep fighting. For your people, for your father's empire, but for something better. Lyra leaned down, pressing her lips to his forehead. I promise, she whispered, her voice cracking. And with that, Eric closed his eyes for the last time, the sound of battle fading into the distance.